In the 1980s, in a small provincial town, there stood an old cinema. Once, it was a gathering place for all residents, from school children to pensioners. People came not just for the films, but for the camaraderie, laughter, and sense of community. However, as the years passed, the cinema suddenly closed its doors. The reasons were shrouded in mystery. Some whispered about the owner's financial troubles, while others spoke of strange occurrences that seemed to happen within its walls. Regardless, the building was left empty and soon became a grim monument to the past. For many years, it stood abandoned. No one dared to enter. Even teenagers who typically loved exploring such places avoided it. It seemed as if the very structure breathed something foreign and unsettling. One day, a young man named Benedict decided to change this. He was a newcomer, a man with big ambitions and a thirst for success. Benedict had long dreamed of owning his own business and saw in the abandoned cinema a chance to bring his plans to life. He believed that the town simply needed a little inspiration to rekindle its love for cinema. He purchased the building for a pittance and enthusiastically set about restoring it. The renovation turned out to be more challenging than he had anticipated. Inside, everything was covered with a thick layer of dust, and the walls exuded dampness. The old projector barely worked, and the seats in the auditorium were ravaged by time and something else. But Benedict was a stubborn man. He poured all his savings into this project and had no intention of stopping. After several months of hard work, the cinema reopened its doors. The first weeks were surprisingly successful. Laughter and applause filled the hall as the scent of fresh popcorn wafted through the air. Families came to watch beloved classic films, Hollywood masterpieces, and popular hits from past decades. Benedict felt on top of the world. His dream was beginning to bear fruit. However, the euphoria did not last long. Over time, attendance began to dwindle. The cinema's repertoire remained unchanged. The same films played on repeat. Initially, viewers tolerated this out of nostalgia, but soon they began to complain about the monotony of the program. Benedict tried to rectify the situation. He added new films to the schedule, organized themed evenings, and even offered free tickets for children. But nothing helped. The cinema gradually lost its audience, as if an invisible force was driving people away from its walls. One day, while exploring the abandoned corners of the storage room, Benedict stumbled upon a dusty iron box. It looked as though it hadn't been opened in ages. The box was labeled "The Ten of Simon," which sparked his immediate curiosity. What could be hidden inside? With a racing heart, he opened it and discovered a film reel inside. It was a Western, and Benedict felt nostalgia wash over him for those good old days when such films were at their peak popularity. Without waiting to watch it with an audience, he decided to project it on the screen of the empty cinema. In the silence of the hall, where laughter and applause once echoed, he turned on the projector. The light flashed brightly, and events began to unfold on screen. A rugged cowboy named Simon, clad in a worn leather coat with piercing eyes, started his journey across desolate prairies. The protagonist never forgave debts. He embodied law itself, finding his debtors in the most unexpected places and forcing them to pay their dues by any means necessary. Simon always repeated, "Everyone must pay their debts." And this phrase became his motto. His reputation was impeccable. No one dared to challenge it. However, one day his father, wishing to temper his son's principles, borrowed 10 cents from him for a beer and refused to repay him. Simon could not forgive this. For him, a debt was a debt regardless of circumstances. This conflict became central to the plot, illustrating how even the closest bonds can be shattered by ruthless adherence to one's principles. Benedict was absorbed in the film and lost track of time. Half of the reel slipped by unnoticed. Suddenly, he felt an urge not to finish watching. He wanted to hold a premiere and see how it all played out with an audience. This thought filled his heart with excitement. Perhaps this film would be that very event that would bring people back to his cinema. Benedict was filled with anticipation as he eagerly awaited when viewers would finally see the Ten of Simon. The intrigue grew with each passing day as thoughts swirled in his mind about how this captivating story would end. With only 2 days left until the premiere, he was determined to make the showing unforgettable. One evening, while checking final preparations in the cinema, an unknown old man approached him. His face was etched with wrinkles, and his eyes glowed with an eerie light. "You must not seat anyone in seat number 10 in the front row," he said with a slight tremor in his voice. At first, Benedict dismissed it as mere madness. He waved off the old man while continuing his tasks. The next day brought another encounter. That same old man reappeared at the cinema and repeated his warning once more. Benedict began to doubt this man's sanity, but still felt uneasy about his words lingering in his mind. Why did this old man insist on that particular seat? On premiere day, tension filled the cinema air as Benedict hoped for success with his idea and that viewers would come flocking back for this film showing. But among the crowd once again appeared that same old man. This time he purchased ticket number 10 in the front row without allowing anyone else to sit next to him. Benedict felt a slight unease creeping over him. What if this warning actually meant something? As the film neared its climax, viewers held their breath in anticipation, while on screen unfolded Simon's final scene. He finished smoking his cigar before throwing it at his father and shooting him straight in the heart over 10 cents. It felt as if even the atmosphere within those walls had reached its boiling point. And then came that moment when lights flickered back on after finishing. Everyone froze in horror at what they saw. Seated in number 10 was that old man with a fresh bullet wound in his chest alongside a cigar lying next to him. Panic erupted among viewers. Screams and whispers filled the hall as people rushed toward exits, frantically trying to escape what they had just witnessed. Benedict stood frozen in disbelief. What had just happened? What did this mean for him and his cinema? The cinema was immediately closed after the tragic incident. An investigation was launched, and Benedict found himself in the spotlight as the main suspect. Investigators meticulously examined the crime scene, and soon forensic experts made a chilling announcement. The caliber of the bullet that killed the old man matched exactly with the caliber of the revolver used in The Ten of Simon. Moreover, the cigar butt found next to the body was identical to the one featured in the film's final scene. This revelation baffled investigators and intensified suspicions against Benedict. The only person who could shed light on the strange events surrounding seat number 10 was the old man himself, but he was no longer alive. Desperate to prove his innocence, Benedict insisted that it was all just a coincidence or a ridiculous mistake. To dispel doubts and demonstrate that he was not involved in the murder, he proposed to sit in seat number 10 during a special screening of the film for law enforcement officers and forensic teams. It was a risky idea, but investigators agreed. Benedict knew he would have to take that cursed seat. Deep down, he understood the danger of his decision. He even considered jumping up and fleeing at the last moment if he sensed any threat, but he kept this thought to himself. On the day of the screening, tension filled the cinema. The hall was packed with police officers and forensic experts, all watching Benedict's every move. He sat in seat number 10 and felt as if he were on an electric chair. The projector whirred to life and the film began. The plot unfolded as grippingly as it had on its first showing. The audience was engrossed in what was happening on screen. As the film reached its final scene, tension in the hall peaked. Simon finished his cigar, threw it aside, and slowly reached for his Colt. At that moment, Benedict tried to leap from his seat, but suddenly realized that his body would not obey him. He was paralyzed. His muscles tensed to their limit. All he could do was twitch in place and emit intermittent sounds. The forensic experts and police officers sitting nearby paid no attention to his condition. They were all seemingly under a spell, their gazes fixed on the screen. No one moved, not even a blink. When the screen went dark and the lights came on in the hall, viewers finally awoke from their trance. But what they saw made their hearts freeze in horror. Sitting in seat number 10 was Benedict with a bullet wound in his chest. Next to him lay a cigar butt. No one could explain what had happened. How could a fictional shot from a screen kill a person? And why had it occurred twice in that very seat number 10? The police had no progress on the case for 2 months. Soon, hope for solving it began to fade, and many started to forget what had happened. However, among the law enforcement officers, there was one brave man. Jason, a known skeptic who did not believe in paranormal phenomena. He decided that he needed to investigate this mysterious situation himself and agreed to watch the film from seat number 10. Although Jason was a bit apprehensive, he understood that he could not rely on help from anyone in the audience. From the accounts of those who attended the last screening, he learned about the strange events and that no one would be able to assist in a critical moment. Therefore, he made the decision to place several colleagues on either side of the screen and 2 in the control booth. Those 2 were to monitor the sounds and stop the film just before Simon's final shot. As the screening began, tension was palpable in the hall. Everyone present knew about the tragedy that had occurred here before, and each felt a fear of what might happen again. Jason sat in seat number 10, his heart racing with excitement. The film progressed as it had before, and soon it reached its final scene. When Simon threw away his cigar and reached for his Colt, Jason felt a surge of adrenaline. He prepared to leap from seat number 10, but suddenly realized that his body felt paralyzed. He couldn't move. Fear engulfed him completely. The 2 staff members in the control booth managed to shut off the film reel, but it continued to spin uncontrollably. They cut wires and even shot at it with their service weapons, trying to stop it manually. All in vain. The situation grew increasingly hopeless. Those who had been stationed beside the screen rushed to help, but it seemed that stopping the reel was impossible. The final shot was destined to sound regardless of their efforts, and when everyone trying to halt the film's progress heard the gunshot, it was Simon's shot. The film reel stopped, and the guys from the booth rushed into the hall in sheer terror. They found Jason with a bullet in his heart and a smoking cigar butt lying next to him. The other forensic experts in the hall were just beginning to come to their senses from shock. The cinema closed its doors forever, once again. The case remained unsolved. No explanation could clarify what had occurred. Only memories of the 10 of Simon remained, a film that became a symbol of fear and mystery for the entire town.